Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Video Vantage podcast. My name is Haley, and once again, I am joined by my co host, Mike. And this week, our topic is how to create engaging audio content for internal audiences. Mike, thank you so much for joining me for another week.
Great to see you again, Haley.
So, what do you believe makes audio content a powerful tool for engaging internal audiences compared to other formats like written communication or even video?
Yeah, it's a great question because, you know, we both work at Bitable and we're all about helping people communicate through video. So it's like, well, why would you choose to do audio instead, right? Or why would someone want to consume audio or why would someone want to create audio? And for me, I think as someone, survey size of one who consumes a lot of audio content, I think that the biggest reason why you'd want to consider that is because it's super flexible.
Yeah,
Um, you can consume it really anywhere,
yeah.
whether it's whether you're walking, whether you're at the gym, whether you're driving, you're in your car going somewhere. I think it's just a really flexible format. Don't get me wrong. I think video is fantastic for a lot of things. I think short text-based communications is fantastic, but
Yep,
those require you to like have your focus be on that medium
absolutely.
where you don't have that flexibility with those things. Whereas with audio, you can be anywhere really, right?
Yep.
Um, the other thing that I think is great about audio, as opposed to like just purely text, and again, the medium will vary, right? But another great benefit of audio is that you can hear the person's tone of voice.
Yes.
I have fallen victim, and I think all of humans, we all can do this at some time or another, right? We're prone to apply our own feelings that you
Absolutely.
have at the moment
Yep.
to the message, and you might read it the wrong way or it's taken the wrong way. And so, like, hearing someone's tone of voice or being able to like inject your enthusiasm into something
Yeah.
is really important, I think, to and valuable to avoid miscommunication. So, I think audio is great.
I completely agree. I think those are all fantastic points, especially about the tone of voice, because there's so many times where you can kind of like misunderstand what a Slack message meant, or like you said, the tone they were conveying it in, and it completely changes the message, even if it's a very simple message. And then you kind of start to overthink it, and yeah, starts a downward spiral for sure.
I've never overthought a Slack message once.
Never. Yeah, me either. And I've never made a TikTok about it either. So, how can organizations effectively use audio content to communicate those important messages with their employees?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to really do is to like think through what your strategy is going to be, right?
Yeah.
And plan it out in advance. It's the same thing with video content creation, right? Having a plan, trying to get organized out and get it organized in advance and planned in advance is really important, I think. The other one is consistency. And I think you have to really make it a habit so that people can expect, like, when is this message going to come out, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think Brent, our CEO at Bitable, is a great example of that. Every week at the same time, there's a message that comes out. Now, he uses video, right?
Yep.
But I think the same thing applies to audio. If you're going to make an audio podcast internally, if your team, your employees, whomever, can expect that, hey, every Thursday afternoon, every Friday morning, the feed's going to be refreshed, or the new episode's going to drop, or a new message will show up in Slack. That consistency and knowing and people knowing, like, okay, it's going to be 30 seconds, it's going to be a minute, it's going to come out this day. I know it's going to happen. I think that to me is really really a good tip for people to follow.
I love that. And I think another benefit of using audio, and this could apply to some video platforms as well, is having the option to change the playback speed. Sometimes you
Mm,
might have to finish or like squish a 2 minute message into a minute time period if you have a break between meetings or something. So, kind of having that control and that flexibility is really cool.
yeah, I do that all the time with the podcasts that I listen to.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm on a walk. I'm gonna walk for half an hour, but this is a 45-minute podcast. I'm gonna bump the speed up a little bit.
Yep.
And I think also we generally can think faster than the message is delivered.
Yes.
And so having that speed up a little bit is really nice.
Totally, totally. And it allows for that flexibility too, because everybody's brains process that information at a different speed and in different ways. So
Yeah,
for you, it might be a two times playback speed, and for me, I might be like a 1.25 person, but
I
it
might
just
need
kind of
half
allows for
sometimes.
everything.
Right.
So when you're creating these messages, what are some of the key factors to keep in mind? Things kind of like tone, style, the format of the message. How do you figure all of that out?
I think it really comes down to your audience, knowing who your audience is. And so, if you know, for example, if it's the company, you might want to start off with, like, hey, here's the business part of the message. But then I think, having, a fun tone part of it as well, or injecting some amount of humor, whatever is right for you and your audience, I think is also important. Um, so I think that that's just important to keep track of, like, who is your audience and make sure you're catering to them. Because if you don't, you'll lose them immediately.
Sure. And you kind of touched on this with that last answer, but are there any other common mistakes you should avoid when you're creating this type of content?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake is like just jumping in without knowing what you want to accomplish,
Yeah,
right? And so if you have that strategy in place of knowing who your audience is, defining what your goals are, what you want to accomplish, what you want to achieve, and then providing clear context for people, and
yeah,
then making sure that you've defined what outcomes you want to have happen. If you don't do those things, your message could be all over the place and rambling. Having that as a guide in place will really make it easy for your audience to consume the content. They'll be engaged with it. um, I think another example or recommendation I would give to people for to try to avoid is something that I've done in the past, which is don't take yourself too seriously,
yeah,
right? Have fun. It's okay if you stumble. It's okay if you mumble a word or if you have to say something twice. A
totally.
lot of that you can edit out if you need
Yep,
to, but also it shows that you're human, right?
absolutely. Yes,
And I think it's great to have fun. Make that joke. Um, you know, have that enthusiasm in your tone of voice, right? So that people really know that, like, oh, they're really excited about this as well because it's
hmm,
infectious. And if you're just super flat with your tone of voice, oh my gosh, you're gonna lose people so fast.
so fast. Yeah, it's just not exciting to listen to somebody who's speaking all in one tone and just doesn't sound thrilled to be delivering that message.
Yeah. The other one I would say is don't try to control everything,
Yeah,
right? Um, be flexible. Seek out the feedback from people. Like, you may have something in mind that you want to accomplish with your podcast or whatever series you're doing, even if it's written or video based too. This applies there too.
totally.
But I think seeking out the feedback, taking it objectively and not, inferring any kind of like intent on it, right? And then modifying it, you will get so much more engagement later
Yeah.
with your audience when they're like, "Oh, Mike listened to me. He didn't. He stopped speaking monotone, or he had a little more fun, or whatever it is." Right. So I think that's really important.
I love that. It makes it feel a bit interactive too. Like if a guest actually sees their feedback being implemented, chances are they'll want to engage with you more and they will probably now like your video or your message a bit more and keep listening. So it works for everyone, really.
Yeah, I think it's less like you're being talked to
Yes,
and more like you're part of a conversation.
absolutely.
So
So, are there any specific types of content that you think work particularly well for internal audiences or communicating with audio at a company?
yeah, I think I'll go back to Brent as an example, right? And I think Brent does a really good job of, like, hey, here's the most important thing that I'm thinking about this week,
Hmm.
right? Um, that helps set the tone for an organization to be like, okay, if this is top of mind for this person in the organization, how can I contribute to that,
Yeah,
right? I think another great type of example would be communicating progress towards a goal, sharing, hey, here's a change in initiatives or um, um, things that we're trying to accomplish in an organization. Those types of things I think are like really good use cases for using audio.
yeah.
I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that as well?
I think those were all super great points. The only other one that comes to mind for me, it's less about communicating a message and more conversational, but it would be like a walking meeting. So maybe taking your
Mm.
one-on-one if you don't need to be looking at a screen or you don't need to kind of follow along with any information to just get outside and turn that into an audio-based meeting where you can kind of do two things at once, go for a little stroll, but also get your message across.
I hadn't thought of that for this episode for some reason, but I think that's a great example.
Yeah, I feel like it could honestly be an episode on its own.
Maybe we do the next week's episode as a walking meeting.
I love that. I think we just came up with a new topic there. I know it was something you and I had tried a few months back, but unfortunately, I live in an area that has very rainy weather in the winter. So it was pretty rainy every time we tried to go for a walking meeting. So give it a try now that the summer's back.
I say we do it again.
And then my last question for you, Mike, is as technology advances and audience preferences evolve, how do you see the future of audio content changing?
Um, yeah, that's a really good question. It's funny because, podcasts have been around for a long time. Um, you know, it- yeah, I'm just going to default back to that for a second, and we can come back to other types of meetings or other types of communication. But like, you know, I think that what technology gives us is the ability to consume it in more places.
Yeah,
Maybe that's an obvious answer for people who are listening to this, going like, "Duh," but it used to be that you had to download everything first before you could listen to it, right? There was no streaming on the original iPods, right? And now you can literally stream if you have access to, a network connection, which is much more and more ubiquitous now. It's just easier to consume that content anywhere you go.
totally.
I suspect there might be, whether it's you can even do it on your watch. You don't even have to have your phone with you. So to me, I'm sure there will be new technology comes up that enables us to, maybe download it to your headphones or who knows what it is, right? But I think um, just having that ability to consume that content anywhere, I think just makes it a great platform.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think along with the consumption being easier, I feel like a lot of tools will come out that will make the creation easier too. We've already seen some of those AI tools that will automatically detect your pauses or your ums and likes and remove them from the content for you. So I feel like that will become a lot more streamlined and creating the content will become more efficient as well.
Which I think it's a great point, and I think if it's easier to create, then more people will have content to consume.
Absolutely. I love that point. And that's a perfect way for us to end this episode. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining me for another week of the Video Vantage. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. We'll see you next week at the same time. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Haley.
Bye.